welcome to the inaugural episode of the Pursuit Hockey Discussion Podcast with myself, Austin Hoey, GM of the Sioux Lookout Bombers in the SIJHL, and Carson Johnstone, the COO of Pursuit Hockey Development and the head coach of the SIJHL's Sioux Lookout Bombers. In this first episode, we're going to be discussing the SIJHL and where it kind of fits in the landscape of the CJHL and hockey in Canada, along with the AJHL and BCHL Merger / Defection by 5 teams, and a little bit of the soft white underbelly of junior hockey in Canada and some things to avoid. Stay tuned for some candid hockey discussion on all things junior hockey, and in the coming weeks, look for interviews, guests, and again, just news about junior hockey within North America. So let's get right into it. Very first episode of Pursuit Hockey Discussion. I'm your host, Austin Hoey, and I'm joined with the CEO, the founder, the
founder,
owner,
COO, president. I don't know. We kind of share the roles and titles, whatever. But
of Pursuit Hockey Development, and we're here to discuss kind of the world of junior hockey, the world of hockey development. This is kind of our first episode, a chance to kind of let you guys know kind of a little bit about us, what the podcast is going to be about, and then as well just some overall opinions on some topics that are kind of hot in the hockey world right now. So
a couple of hot takes.
Yeah. So I will I'll hand it over to Carson. Just tell us a little bit about kind of your background and how you came to be a man with many titles.
Yeah. Okay. My background, mostly all hockey. I should say I played a lot of sports growing up and stuff, but I mean, it was always hockey from the time I was really, really young. So, I kind of tried to just pursue that as long as I could, pardon the pun. But I played junior, obviously minor hockey all the way through. Played for my dad, who is a decorated coach in junior hockey and coached in the O and stuff. Did a good job. So I was pretty fortunate that way to learn the game. And then played junior, like I said. Played college for a little bit and was fortunate enough to have some experiences overseas. So that was good. And then kind of my last year in Sweden, when it was all shaken down, was when I decided, I was just like, what am I going to do, right? Like, I always knew I wanted to coach, which is just kind of like innately in me, just because my dad and stuff, right? Like, I just figured, well, of course I'm going to be a coach one day, but I didn't know really what that looked like. So my last year in Sweden there, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm done. Like, I'm over training and overdoing all this stuff. I'm just, I want to start my life. I had met Emily, my wife. Now we got a couple kids. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of information at once here, but yeah, when I was there, I just decided I want to stick to what I know, I guess, and what I've known and always know, I feel, is hockey. So I started this kind of development business, and my idea was just to try and grow the game, I guess, in all capacities, right? Just help players, and, I've tried to start a couple programs myself and just help other teams, grow their programs and stuff like that. So that was just the idea, and it's kind of grown into this boutique agency thing, and it's been a good ride, about 5 or 6 years, so it's been fun. Here we are.
Yeah.
That was a mouthful, eh?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I was going to cut you off a couple times, but I figured that I'd let you keep going. And now, obviously, you're the head coach of the Sioux Lookout Bombers in the SIJHL.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, right on. And then, I guess, just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've lived in Sioux Lookout my entire life, and now I did live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, for 10 years, where I worked with True North Player Development as a on-ice instructor, as well as a lead for various projects around the city as it pertained to individual player development. And then I moved back to Sioux Lookout, and since being here, have become the general manager of the Sioux Lookout Bombers in the SIJHL. So we decided to kind of join forces a little bit, and we had some ideas, and like Carr said, some hot takes on some things, and I think we're gonna kind of dive into that a little bit on this podcast, and I mean, why not get started here and maybe talk about the league that we're pretty familiar with now, with 2.5-ish. I guess you can call it 2 years. Like, we were both. I've been in it since I guess, the start of February in 2021, and you were on a little bit later after that. We hired you on in April.
April, yeah.
So we've kind of been in the same in the trenches, I guess, together here, navigating this situation. The youngest CJ league just started in 2001, which is, I mean, 20 years, but when you compare that to the SJ and the MJ, have been around since like 1930 or whatever. It is tough, but I guess just from our perspective, or I'll let you start, just to give people at home an idea, or kind of an idea of what the SIJHL is.
Yeah. For the people at home, for me, my home, Niagara Falls, Ontario, I guess it's kind of looked down upon because it's not well known, and it is a league, like you said, kind of in its infancy. I know 20 years is a long time, but it's not really a long time in the grand scheme. So it's not a well known league, but I think with technology and kind of the way scouting and things have changed, it's made this league a bit more accessible. And the one thing in the past 3 years that's changed drastically is just the automatic bid to the Centennial Cup. That changed things huge. So now every team thinks they have a chance to win, and you win, you get a chance to go to the national tournament. So that was huge for our league, and I think that's helped attract some better quality players. Not that there weren't good quality players up here, but you know what I mean. Just deeper. The lineup seemed to be deeper.
Oh, for sure, and I think a lot of it too is of those 20 years, and we can be completely candid here, and we want to express that none of the opinions that we necessarily share here can be brought back and or anything less of the Sewell Bombers. This is Austin's opinion and Carson's opinion, but I think we can honestly say that the first 15 probably years of the SIJHL, maybe 14, 13, you could look down at it as it was not the best place to play.
Kind of just like the Wild West, like a lot of stuff going on and like rules being like figured out, I guess.
Exactly, and I think there's a lot of and rightfully so. There were some interesting programs to come through this league, some interesting teams, some interesting players to come through this league. But if you look at the last 6 years in the teams that have joined this league, whether it be the first one being with the Wisconsin Lumberjacks, who say what you want about their program or their success, they've been a successful program.
Absolutely.
Throughout their tenure in the league, they're good, well off in terms of fan support, in terms of their building, in terms of what they offer as a program. They get
returning players pretty much every year.
Exactly. They send a lot of players on to NCAA and ACHA. Then you have the Canberra Fighting Walleye, who have been a pretty solid program in terms of results and sending players on and all that. And then you have us and Sioux Lookout here, who have also established ourselves here in our second season as a pretty solid program. So I think that right there does a pretty good job of amping up the level of the league itself, as well as the competition. I mean, if you look at it for a long time, I guess I'm kind of the SIJHL historian here.
A little bit, but I mean, you know more than I do for sure. I just know a little bit.
If you look at it, like, realistically, the league for the longest time was the Thunderway North Stars show. Whether they were called they were originally called, I think, the Fort William North. Well, before that, they were the Fort William Hawks. Then they were the Fort William North Stars, and now they're the Thunder Bay North Stars. And they were kind of seen as the program for the longest time. Like, if you look at any of the real prospects that have come out of the league, whether it be the two NHLers that have played in the league substantially, whether it be Robert Bortuzzo with St. Louis, Carter Hutton, who's played on a bunch of teams, they were both on the probably quote-unquote best team to ever play in the SI. They went 50-2.
Yeah, that's wild.
They actually went to when they won the Dudley, they went to I think it was called the RBC at the time.
Yeah.
They went to the semifinals, lost in overtime to Brooks, I think, in the semifinals, the national championship. Wow. So, I mean, right there, like, that team is insane. It's actually funny if you go back and look at that team. That's like the pinnacle SIJHL team, because you got Robert Bortuzzo, who didn't put up a lot of points, and you got Carter Hutton, who had very good numbers. The rest of the team is like Thunder Bay born and bred guys that like never played anywhere else. But there's a guy who put up 114 points that year. That was the last year of hockey. He didn't do anything after that.
Really? He's like, that's enough.
But I think that had a lot to do with just the SI, like, schools basically not looking at the SI as a viable place to take players from. Or I
think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was pretty well, not inaccessible, but difficult to access, man. It's far away from everything. It's a long drive. There's not a lot of stuff along the way to get there, so it's not an attractive place to drive to for scouts.
Yeah.
So like I think with like hockey TV and Instat and like the influx of like usage of technology in hockey, I think that has changed things a lot, right? Personally. So I don't know. I think if you're motivated enough, you know, you can recruit a good hockey player and you can help them out and help move them on to with the access you have to contact these coaches and everything now, right? I just think that has certainly helped. And in years previous, like things were different, right? Like, I mean, not every coach had their email on their website. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things. Like, it's just that I'd say in the past, 6 to 8 years has probably climbed like crazy, like where everything is pretty much uniform now. You go on these websites and you see like, okay, coaching staff roster, like blah blah blah, they all pretty much look the same, and it wasn't like that before. Like, you talk about Wild West a little bit, and it's like even the CJ didn't really have parameters, it seemed like, for leagues across leagues until recent, right?
That is true. I mean, that's a good point. Like, it just wasn't accessible, the cameras and stuff now. Okay, I'm going to read off. This is his name, Corey McEwen.
Yeah.
He played 2 years for the Thunder Bay 3 years for the Thunder Bay Kings on his EP, and then he played 3 years for the North Stars. First year with the North Stars had 41 and 30. Mm-hmm. Second year with the North Stars, 66 and 43. And then in his last year, he had 119 and 50. And that was the last year that on his AP. That's just insane.
Called it quits.
Yeah, that was enough for him. Good for him. Hey,
he loved Junior.
Shout out to Corey McEwen. If anyone knows him in the Thunder Bay area, shout out to him.
Yeah.
He played for the Twins senior hockey.
Solid career.
Anyways, yeah, no, I think it's you mentioned the point of just the accessibility to players now is so much different. Like, a good example being the Wisconsin Lumberjacks. If you were an outsider with maybe just EP or just the stats of a league, mm-hmm. you look at that team and it's like, oh well, they've never finished better than 6th in the regular season standings out of a 7, 6
to 8
league.
Yeah.
They've never made it out of the second round of the playoffs. They've consistently, in terms of team success, not had the best. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the players that they create, or the players they've been able to recruit, or the time that they've had, or the young men that they've been able to craft, mm-hmm. and it's, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And that comes from being able to watch games and being able to have access to those players now, right?
Well, the thing is, too, credit to Doug, and like a lot of junior hockey coaches now, I think, are kind of more of this mindset.
That's Doug Lean, right? He's the GM coach of the Wisconsin Lumberjacks.
Yeah, thanks for being clear on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, credit to Doug, as he's not one of those guys that's like gonna dig his claws into guys and make them stay, right? Like, he runs a good enough program that guys want to return if they're young enough and they have a good experience, and that you've seen that in his roster. However, at the same time, if guys want to move on and try other things, I know for a fact he lets them like go venture out and try things, and he's not like afraid of what his program has to offer, right? So I credit him for that, for sure. And obviously his players respect him, and he does a good job. So
yeah, I think, well, you mentioned like program has to offer, and that's something that we've been pretty big on here in Sioux Lookout is what can your program offer, right? Like,
absolutely.
I think a lot of the time too, coming into it, a lot of guys are so quick to just play we're in the SI, so what's the point of going after this player? Or we're in the SI, what's the point of trying to get this guy to go to this school? Or we're in the SI, so what's the point of trying to trade for this guy?
Yeah.
When I think that you've said it multiple times, at meetings and stuff, it's just, what does your program offer? What can you offer as a program? And I think Doug is a good encapsulation of that in Wisconsin, and I would say that we're a pretty good encapsulation of that here in Sioux Lookout.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's real important to us, obviously. Well, we talked about it as a main thing, right? Yeah. Like, I don't care what league we play in, because of even the perspective I had on the SI before I came up here. I didn't think it was going to be particularly good, from what I had heard. So the way I had to recruit, even from my mindset, was like, okay, well, I got to forget about those preconceived notions I had, and just talk about what we were going to do as a program. And that's like anything in life. Like, you try to compare yourself or compare your program or compare anything to others, you're just going to always be spinning your tires, because you can never really truly be exactly what someone else is. But what you can do is focus on, maybe borrow other pieces, right? And like a lot of good coaches and good programs do that. You borrow good ideas and stuff, but you just focus on your mission. So we're definitely, like, that's our MO. So I think whatever league we're in doesn't matter. We've been very focused on player development and making sure our guys have a good experience. And I think we've shown with having lots of returners that in our first year, it was going well, and I think it's going well again this year. So.
Yeah. Well, I think, honestly, just to straight up bring up an example that happened like not even 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
We called up an AP, an affiliate player. We were a little short in terms of, it's February, guys are sick. And the dad, the player was able to get into one game. He got, how many shifts do you think?
8 over under 7.5 is the number.
Did he get a shift in the third?
I don't know. I was trying to a couple times, but with power plays and stuff, sometimes.
And then for that, player, and then for that player's dad to like be so impressed with how he was treated as a kid and how the guys welcomed him into the room. Lots of programs will stress. It
just makes you feel validated and like what we find important.
Exactly, right? And it's a lot of programs stress like good person first, good player second. And very rarely does it. I think it actually does get practiced. That's just something that looks good on a brochure somewhere.
For sure.
But I think that we've done a good job, and I think there are a number of teams in this league now that you could say that about.
Yeah, every organization, it's far more about like anyone can drop those buzzwords in a meeting, right? And like that's why like a lot of these junior hockey, like no disrespect, but you go down to the States and there's a lot of organizations and say the USP, Premier, and some of these like feeder leagues where the coaches sell on the world and sell, and it sounds awesome, and then you get there and it's a lot of money for not really what you're saying. So it's like you have to practice those buzzwords, right? And like you have to have courage to say those things and actually follow through, because it's hard, right? Like it's hard to follow through on everything you say all the time, and you want to be as regimented as you always say, and even for us, I would be absolutely lying if I said we were exactly down to the T how we sold our program. It's tough to be. We try to be as close as we can, right? But I think you just got to focus, like you say, on making sure your guys have a good experience and just working with what you have every year. That's junior hockey across the globe, right?
And most of the time it's small things too, right? Like that's something that coming from a spot where I was primarily just working one-on-one with kids on the ice. I wasn't really in a team dynamic. You have to relearn some of the things that like maybe to somebody doesn't feel like it makes a difference, but like to a lot of those kids it does make a difference, whether it's meals on the road, or how many guys are in a hotel room, or what you're getting at the rink, or
little extra stuff.
And that's all it makes, especially now. Like you mentioned how everything's so connected, whether it's the scouts being able to watch players or you being able to contact teams. Else connected is all the players are connected. Right, and it's all it takes is one guy to tell one guy that this place, we had shitty food on the road, or they jammed 5 guys in a room, or they made us sleep on the bus for 10 hours. That's all it takes, and then and it's ridiculous to think about, but that reputation then spreads, and then it's there for.
Oh, dude, don't go there. We broke down and this happened, and like it spreads like wildfire. Like you have to be real careful, and like sometimes even trying to do your best, you can't please the the most pain in the ass guy. Like no disrespect, it's just the truth, right? Like there's gonna be some guys that are unhappy with even the best of scenarios. So like, what are you going to do about that?
And I think that's important. And again, we can only do is if you go at it with the right mindset and you are working hard. Yeah, there's going to be the small hiccup, but I think at the end of the day, like that stuff is going to sort itself out, and the good reviews are going to outweigh maybe those small things that end up happening.
I want to address, because we just haven't really, I don't know if you planned on getting there, but we've kind of like sidetracked a bit. We were talking about almost all the teams in the SI. We kind of passed on Red Lake and Ford a little bit, and even Kenora. But I'd like to commend Lee Stone, myself, personally, just on kind of cleaning up the mess that was left behind after Red Lake won. They kind of had a tough situation fall in their lap, and it was, Kev tried to come in last year as a young coach and fix it, and it's just a tough situation, right? It was tough to keep players there and stuff. So Lee's done a real good job recruiting, and they're a competitive hockey team this year. So it's definitely made the quality of our league better, and you can see in the standings like just how competitive it is, right? So
for sure. And I mean, I would agree with you there. Like they played a really solid game, and to build that team from where it was, like where they left at, like in terms of competitiveness, Lee's done a fantastic job. And again, you touch on Fort Francis, and it's the same type of thing. Like we can talk about being dealt shitty hands. The guys who are running that team right now, like those guys were dealt like
a couple coaches in a row that were like, yeah, tough. They definitely left stuff in their wake, right? Like, not that we have to get into details of things, but they had a couple of things that were, no organization ever wants to deal with.
Yeah.
So the fact that they got a great social media presence and they're doing some other things right now that are awesome for the organization. Like, I love to see that because you see where it's headed, right? And like, they got returners. You talk about returning players. Guys obviously like being there to some degree. So, I mean, and we did get a few other players this year. We traded for a few other guys, which was awesome. So it was good to good to start building a nice relationship with those guys. And yeah, like, I mean, that's...
It's funny you mentioned that too, because we talk about good guy first, good player second.
Yeah.
And we, basically in terms of like veteran importance to a team, like they dealt us 3 other guys that were pretty important pieces to that team. Them realizing that they're in a bit of a rebuilding situation, and we were in a spot where we're trying to make a push. And the 3 guys that we got from them, Trevor Sanderson, Kobe Delaney, and Josh Green, have basically, like, they fit right in, and they've been, great people.
Yeah, so tremendously helped.
Yeah. Fort Francis to say, hey, they brought guys in that are good guys.
Yeah, all 3 of those kids, can't say enough about like the people that they are before hockey players. So yeah, that's a good point. I never really even thought about it that way, but in that respect, like, they must be doing good things as far as recruiting good guys. So. And
I mean, we've mentioned it a bunch of times too, like. That team, I don't know if a team has ever, like, that team consistently, not to, like, shit on the SIJHL schedule, make it too bad, but though it feels like Fort Francis gets the short end on the schedule every year almost.
Well, they definitely had some competitive teams. Well, you never know, and that's the thing too, right? Like, even we say at the beginning of a year, like, your team, you do so much hard work to recruit, you do so many things, and like, you feel good about it, but until that puck drops, you never really know. However, to have, perennial good teams like Dryden and Cam River and ourselves, who had a good year last year, and a lot of returning players, like, that's a tough situation to put forward into play those guys early in the season. So I mean, they didn't have a lot of early success, and that hurts, right? Because some of your older veteran guys like Kobe and Sandy and that, it just kind of plants that, I guess, seed of doubt, right? And moving away from Fort Francis themselves, like any junior hockey team, right? Like, that's how important sometimes, like, getting out the gate can be.
Yeah.
And not that we even really planned to talk about that, but I mean, getting out the gate was huge for us this year. Like, we went 9-0-1. So like, if we don't do that, those guys probably don't make the phone call about wanting to come to us.
Exactly.
So like, it's fickle. It's a fickle business.
Like, if you think, there's so many things in hockey that are so. If this happens this way, it's completely different. Even last year, like, if we don't go out and beat Wisconsin twice to start the season, and then, you take one off of Thunder Bay, who, again, that's one of those situations where, if we talk about junior hockey, like, and the SI, one of the Wild West teams was the Sulaco Flyers. That was one of the teams that was like, oh, fuck, like, this team is I mean, they got the 2-50 record, right? That's the worst record, and like, it's got to be in junior hockey history. So
it's close.
Everyone kind of coming into it is like, oh, is Sulaco just going to be the Flyers again? Is Sulaco just going to be the Flyers again, right? And in the span of 2 weekends, we were basically able to crush that entire doubt.
Yeah.
But even if Wisconsin comes in and we lose 2 close ones, and it's different, but it's like, oh, here we go again. Sulaco's just going to lose every game again, right?
Yeah, and you don't have the same amount of fan presence and all that stuff.
And in the same way that Thunder Bay or Fort Francis starts 0-9 this season, if they start 4-5, that's a completely different team. Now you're not clutching your stick so hard. Now you're not, oh, fuck, every single mistake's in the back of my net. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and like I said too, then your veteran players like aren't right away early on in the season looking over the hedges. Maybe they're like looking inward at each other, like, okay, there's some confidence here. We've won a couple good games. Like, that's just, it's so crazy because it's junior hockey more than anything, I think, is probably about mental toughness. Like, and that's like what you have to teach probably more than anything, is just like ways to handle emotion and ways to handle situations, because they can all play, they can put it together, but it's like, having a junior hockey team work as a unit is the toughest thing you can do.
100%.
Because they're all focused on where they're headed and what's going next, and what, like, it's a bunch of individuals at the end of the day, but the teams, those are the guys that win, the hockey teams. Yeah. So I think that's what's important.
Everything is going to be a stepping stone. It doesn't matter if you're in the OHL, it doesn't matter. It's a stepping stone to the next situation, right? So that's a good way to put it, actually, and I hadn't necessarily thought of it that way in that sense that like every single guy you're always looking. What's next year? What's next year? What's next year? Because you have to, right?
Absolutely.
Because we've talked about it, if you're not being proactive in your development and your recruitment, then you're unfortunately you're actually you're negatively affecting where you're going to go. If you're not going and doing those things, you're already behind.
Yeah.
It's not just being stagnant; you're actually hurting yourself.
Absolutely.
I guess I know it's a lot of SIJHL talk this week, but I think it's important to talk about, we've kind of mentioned some teams, we've mentioned, where we fit, where the league fits, and right now, like, as a unit, we've had this discussion a couple of times. Where do you think the SI fits within the landscape of the CJ right now? There's lots of turmoil in the CJ.
Yeah.
There's lots of, I guess, not unrest, but there's...
We'll talk about it later. That's got to be the news thing we talk about for sure, but tough for me. I've seen AJ games. I've seen, OJ games. I've seen Northern Ontario junior games. I've never seen the games out east other than on video, right? Like the Maritime leagues and stuff and Quebec League. So it's, it's tough for me, right? Like to make that claim without an obvious bias. Yeah. I'd say out of 9 leagues, we could fit comfortably in the 6 to 8 area. I think with what I've seen the past couple of years, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. I'm not going to even name who I think is below or whatever, or have a ranking thing, particularly as a coach in the CJ. I don't want to do that. And a guy like that helps kids develop, because I think there's value, like you say, in any program that offers, something good for the player, and, it's ice time and, a lot of those things, right? Like whether physiotherapists and whatever the situation looks like, right? Doesn't matter what league you're necessarily in. So long answer is 6 to 8.
I think that, you bring up a good point in that, like, I think we're past the point now. There was a time where, like, the SI was, if there's 9 leagues, they're number 10, like...
Yes.
We're past that point. We're at a point now where it's, I think, honestly, after I've talked to probably GMs and coaches in every league and talked to players who have watched, or people who have watched players in every league, I think we're in a spot now, like you say, the 6 to 8, I think that we're in a spot now where there are programs in our league that can be... Not necessarily from a let's put the entire, and again we've talked about this lots, and what do you offer as a program? Yeah, we've put aside the skill on the ice. I think that this league has formulated teams now that can compete with almost any team in any league, realistically. For sure. Like from a organizational standpoint, like for sure there are teams that are above us. Absolutely.
Well, it was like that discussion we had. I don't think we could talk about the SIJHL without discussing, we mentioned Brooks too, right? Yeah. So we could talk about that just because it relates to what we're talking about here. Yeah. So Doug Lean, our buddy, we love him, went to play Brooks because I believe he's got some connection. And anyway, he went and played Brooks. Something like that. Anyways. They went and played and lost like 23-0, and it was like on TikTok and all this stuff and whatever. So at our league meeting, we were kind of talking about it, and obviously some guys had some opinions for him, and he was defending his position, and respectfully, I just kind of we had this discussion as a group. We just said, like, man, we get it, wanting to play the best, and to be the best, you got to see what's the best and try and get there, right? But we feel as if, like, as a league, we're ready to maybe compete with in quotations, air quotes here, compete with the some of the bottom feeder teams in those leagues, and it's like there's nothing wrong with going to play those teams. And actually, didn't they play Swan and another team in the SJ and did okay?
That's the thing that gets lost in all of this. And it's unfortunate for Doug that's all that ever gets brought up is this 23-0 pounding, as Chippy would say.
Yeah, shout out Coach Chippy.
But like they go in and play Kindersley and have a tight game. They go in and play Dauphin and have a tight game, and they go in and play it was Larange too. Like these are teams that are consistently in the playoffs. In the SJ, consistently Dauphin, consistently a very good team in the MJ. Yeah, and they play them fairly tight on. That's not even their team. That's their preseason tryout team essentially, right? They're bringing a bunch of guys to take looks at. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that got lost, but again, Doug has to take a little bit of the blame on that. Like at the same time, you go play Drayton Valley or go play you know, maybe one of the teams that's not the national champion every single year.
Yeah.
Right? That's exactly what you were saying, and that's what those guys are saying.
Exactly.
It's one of those things where you go in and play Drayton Valley, or you go in and play Calgary, and
maybe you do all right.
5-3 or something, and it's like, oh fuck, where the fuck is look at the SJ?
Or the SI,
right?
yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah, man. I think so too. And hey, like we said, great intentions. Like, man, I have similar aspirations, I should say. You know, I'd love to be able to, you know, play them, but I just hope it's at the tournament. You know what I mean? Like that's my thing. Like, if we do end up playing them, great. I hope it's at the Centennial Cup, and then if we lose, whatever, or if we compete or whatever happens, you know what I mean? Then it's like, okay, well, it's there. If you make that trip up there, it's like a sacrificial kind of thing. It feels like, because Doug admittedly told us, I want your best. You know, he told Papiano, like, I want your best lineup. Like, I want to see what you got. So they got it. Did they ever get it?
Whatever it was, like 4 NHL draft picks and every guy.
Yeah, something crazy. But either way, what an organization that you know, team is. Brooks, the Bandits, just perennial excellent teams, and they've now left to the BCHL. Yeah, should we segue there?
That's perfect segue.
Yeah. Into
I guess our news of the week here, or of the. In junior hockey, this is the news of the year, pretty much.
Yeah.
I guess you want to call it 5 of the most premier organizations in the AJHL, or 5 best, or 5 of the best.
Yeah.
Have decided to join the BCHL. It originally was next season, but again,
I heard rumblings about it at the beginning of this year. We were all talking about it because the BC obviously left last year. Right,
yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
Is that 2023? So,
yeah.
So they left originally on their own, separate from Hockey Canada, which is a whole other mess of things we'll save for another episode. But there's a bunch of reasons they left. I think mostly because they want full control over player recruitment and, you know, who they can sign and not. I think that's the main idea there.
They wanted to recruit 16 and 17-year-olds, and they wanted Europeans.
Yes. So I mean, cool. So that's what they decided to do, and we all heard that if it went well the first year, that obviously, or was it this year that's the first year they were independent? No. Last year they were. So anyways, I had heard that if things went well, Brooks and, you know, the other teams that left, I heard that Brooks +4. So, I mean, it checked out. I just didn't know the other +4. But hey, good for them that they have the money and they have the support, and they can do that for their players and be, you know, in a real competitive league and have the autonomy to do those things now. Like, I think that's good on them. I just think the way it shook down, which we can discuss, which is why this is even a giant story, a bunch of players got hurt in the process.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like now at least they've got some semblance of a season. Right, so if you're not aware, probably are. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are. The 5 teams, Sherwood Park.
Yeah.
What it doesn't sound important. They're playing each other in the rest of their 5-team season. Then the winner of that league will then play the winner of the BCHL in their West Coast Championship, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
For a long time, though, the AJ had just come out and said we're going to suspend every game that these teams were playing in, because their intention was to stay in that league for the rest of the year.
Yeah, a long time being about 10 days, which is in the junior hockey, it's an eternity.
Yeah.
What it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, realistically, right? We found out about that Saturday night when somebody posted on social media that they were that these 5 teams were leaving for the BC, and then the AJ, not 15 minutes later, was like, yeah, we're suspending all these games. There are teams on their way to the rink to play.
Yeah.
To turn around. Like, that's crazy. So now we're at a spot where they have a place to play, but it is unfortunate, because that's the thing that, and I think gets forgotten a lot, you know. And I think that we've highlighted some organizations that do truly care about their players, whether it just be in the SI, that's fine. But I think that is what gets lost a lot of the time, and there's a lot of, I guess, unnecessary egos that happen in this business a lot.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking out for yourself first. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened here, but it certainly smells like that's what happened here.
Yeah, it's weird, right? You don't know the situation to try and pinpoint. It's tough, but it certainly looks like that, and it smells fishy. You wonder who it was. Either one or two people that ultimately made a mistake, you know, because I don't think that was probably supposed to be announced. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that was probably not supposed to be announced yet. So I mean, that was just crisis management after that, right? And obviously a big reaction from the AJ, like upset because they're losing their perennial like leader in like NCAA commitment, all these things, and like that, it was in their statement. Like, do we have their statement? Could we read it? Like, if we get up their statement, I'm pretty sure it mentions and tries to defend, right away, one of the things about like still being one of the most committed to player advancement in NCAA and all this stuff. And like the fact that they have to put that in their statement shows right there how much it hurt them with those 5 programs leaving, right? Like some of those, because like we just talked about, it's all about your program. And like sometimes it's okay, our league had 80 commitments or had however many commitments, but sure, 77 of them came from 5 organizations or whatever it may be. I don't know the numbers. I'm spitballing. I'm just giving like numbers for people's sake, to listeners to do what they will with that. But you know what I'm trying to say here.
100%. I mean, it is. I'm trying to find this.
Like it scared them. So of course they had a reaction. It scared them. It probably hurt them. They're probably rattled, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so they said, AHL statement on the wants to thank the 11 teams at the core of our league for their strong support as we continue working through the situation caused by the mid-season announcement that 5 of our clubs have committed to play unsanctioned hockey in the BCHL. We are disappointed but not surprised that the 5 defecting clubs now intend to drop out of the AJHL immediately to participate in an unsanctioned exhibition series. But for the past week, they have repeatedly denied any agreement with the BCHL. Today's admission of finalized franchise agreements and integration has helped clarify their true position. The full impact of this decision on our ongoing investigation remains to be determined, as the teams have now eliminated a route back to the AJHL for their players this season. The AJHL has a strong future. We are grateful for the message of support our players and coaches have received from hockey fans across the country over the past week. Our 11 core teams remain committed to our fans, committed to our communities, and committed to Alberta. We're looking forward to an exciting finish to our 60th season. We also would like to let everyone know we appreciate the expressions of interest coming from various partners and stakeholders who are currently exploring the possibility of becoming part of our league.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the one I originally read, because they've released a few, obviously, now. The one I originally read first was like reactionary, and they talked about like the suspension of things and how they're still committed to player development or NCAA, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's out there.
I'm trying to find that one.
They're out there. But I want to go somewhere. Can I go somewhere? Okay. Stakeholders. We don't have cup holders. But we were talking about that. So NJHL, Lac La Biche, I played there at Portage College, but Jonah Smith also from there, so we have a little bit of some ties there.
Yeah, Will Cox, friend of the show.
Will Cox, friend of the show. Absolute beauty. But I hear some rumblings. Lac La Biche may also be applying for an AJ team. That's what you told me.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
I can, because I love that stuff. I love the soft white underbelly of junior hockey.
That's what we should have called this show.
Yeah.
This segment.
This segment, because we can segue into the next segment of the soft white underbelly of junior hockey.
Want to wrap up the AJ thing before we go there?
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, because it was related to the AJ, I wanted to go there, but let's wrap up how we feel about this thing.
That's fair. So I think it is very unfortunate, and again, I think I told you this, and this is my theory, is that Brooks Bandits, great organization. Whether it's Okotoks, whether it's Sherwood Park, these are great organizations. Spruce Grove, great organizations. Black Falls, they have a lot of people who work for them. They have a lot of people in positions of power. Yeah. But I think what people forget a lot of the time, and again, I could be completely off base on this, but I think a lot of the time what people forget is that a lot of these organizations are held up. You know that meme of like the 2 people walking and there's a bunch of people underneath them holding up the ground? Yeah. It's a lot of volunteers doing a lot of stuff, even at the highest level. You need a lot of volunteers. And I can guarantee you either the social media person is paid $50 a month or they're not paid at all. Yeah. And I think that something happened, that someone told someone to do something, wires got crossed or something, and I think they posted it by accident. Yeah. What is the point of posting that on January 25th? It doesn't make any sense. It's either
a ridiculously big-headed, stupid, like egotistical move by the owner of the BCHL. Yeah. Which I don't want to. I'm not accusing him of that. I'm just saying that would be the move. I don't think he did that. I think, like you're saying, he had to have, like, there was rumblings about it. Maybe they were fired up at the All-Star weekend. Someone heard about it, this, that, and it's like, oh yeah, like, I don't know.
Yeah, fucking post it. And the guy's like,
that seems crazy.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, man. Like, I'd be interested. I wonder if somewhere down the line, the hockey world's small, if we'll talk to the right person that knows the details. And that'd be interesting. If you know something and you'd like to, clarify, you can certainly shoot us a message.
We'll give you a platform.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We will.
But I think that now, at least, they found a way to get those players to play the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Which is the most important thing. And they've allowed them to at least play for something, right? Like, it is unfortunate. Like, okay, we just mentioned it in the podcast. Junior players, doesn't matter if you're playing for Suluco Bombers or you're playing for the Brooks Bandits. What are you doing next year? They're looking at what they're doing next year. But it is still nice that the guys who have, at least, there's a guy actually I want to highlight. I've been kind of watching for a while. His name is Huey Hooker. And he plays for the Brooks Bandits. He's an 03.
Is he like 5'6"? He runs their power play. He's unreal.
Kid's a beauty.
Yeah.
Is not committed anywhere.
Really?
Because he's small. He just got committed. Sorry, he's committed to Yale now.
Good for him.
But
wow.
So
not
he
a
wasn't
bad
committed
spot
for the longest time.
Wow.
And I was going to point that guy out. I was like, this guy's a Brooks. Like, this is now his fourth year for Brooks.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is here to win national championships with Brooks.
Yeah.
Great that he's committed to Yale now, so good for him. But that's what I was like, I feel bad for that guy. Like, that's the guy who's like, I'm a Brooks Bandit through and through. I just want to win national championships for the Brooks Bandits. He can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But good. Committed to Yale. Great.
Yeah, hey, maybe they win the BC.
Yeah.
If they win their little group and go over. Because I think the winner of that goes and crosses over and plays the winner of the BC, if I'm not mistaken. So that's cool. Anyways, so let's segue.
Yes.
Let's go.
Segue to the soft-weight underbelly of Canadian junior hockey, or even junior hockey in general.
Yeah, let's go there.
I'm a huge fan of, like, scouring Facebook pages and Instagram accounts.
And watching Facebook Lives from an iPad. Yeah.
And I just, for whatever reason, whether it's just my curiosity or my just, I don't even know, I'm just a psychopath maybe. And then I just love to just watch these terrible Facebook Live videos and to dig deep on what's going on in these programs. And one of my favorite things is the National Junior Hockey League, formerly the GMHL West Division. GMHL East, they have their own set of problems. From what I can tell, they're okay. Shout out to Lucas Dunn and Tyler Dukoff.
Yeah.
Suluco Bombers, who are now playing in the GMHL down in Southern Ontario.
The boys.
But the GMHL West was its complete different animal. Like, from 9 players on the bench to, max guys playing on different teams so they could ice. There were enough players on a roster to all this stuff. To the point where the GMHL was like, no. This is making us look bad.
Yeah.
This is brutal.
Yeah.
You have to stop being a member of the GMHL. So they rebranded themselves to the NJHL. Now, my favorite team is the Edson Eagles, who were in the GMHL West last year. Now, this is a team that they're I guess Hockey Canada calls them outlaw. I don't necessarily like calling them outlaw because they're unsanctioned maybe. I don't know. We can call them whatever we want. It is what it is. There are rules in place.
Autonomous?
I'm going to bring this up because there are rules in place in the CJ, right? If you want to classify yourself as Junior A, one of the rules is you have to be 20 years old or younger. So that means this year you can only be a 2003 birth year.
Yeah.
You can only have 8 2003s dressed for any game.
Yeah.
The NJHL says, nah, that's okay. We're going to allow overagers, which is fine. But, you'd think there'd be a limit on the amount of overagers. Well, the Edson Eagles have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 21-year-olds on their junior hockey team.
It's like the Victory Lap team.
I don't necessarily know, if you count that, a 21-year-old as a junior player, but, 21 is pretty old, and they got 14 of them. Now, that's a little interesting, but you had mentioned, that's just, I guess that's to preface this NJHL.
Yeah, that's just what it is.
They also have Carson Baptiste, who might be having quietly
it's
the
quiet.
Best junior season.
Is it ever quiet?
The best junior season in the country. So I got some stats for you here.
Okay.
Because they've been updated.
Oh, no.
And it's even worse than we thought it was. So.
Or better.
Carson Baptiste, 31 games played.
Can I guess?
Yep, sure. Okay, this is a live on-air guess. Goals, assists, and then, goals and assists.
Okay.
31 games played.
He's got 48 rips.
Okay.
And he's got 67 apples.
You're close on the apples.
Yeah?
So he's got 63 apples.
Okay.
But he's got 81 goals.
I went a half? Half?
He's averaging
that
over
is
2.5 goals a game.
Wow.
That guy's almost averaging a hat trick a game.
100...
That is insane. Now, the
so
best
he's
part
got like
about
150 points.
144 points.
Good math, eh? That was quick math right there.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't look it off of GP at all.
Yeah, true.
But the best part is that, like, he spent the guy's a serviceable player because, like, he was over a point a game in the MJ for way 2 years in a row, and then he goes in, like...
Yeah, that seems like there's a reason he ended up there. I'd be curious to know that. If anybody knows that story, feel free to let us know. But
if Carson Baptiste wants to come on our podcast...
I would absolutely love that kid to come on our podcast because I got to hear it.
I gotta
hear what it's like to score 2.5 goals a game.
in a junior league.
Well, are we going to... In
a juvenile league?
Yeah, let's call it that. Sure.
Okay. I just want to bring up Dayton Chance. He's second place in NJHL scoring. How many points does he have in 30 games?
Second place? He's got to be not even close. Like 80?
90.
Okay.
Now, this is the worst part. Is Dayton Chance, great year. 90 points in 30 games. That's 3 points a game. We're not even sniffing our MVP vote.
Not even close.
Like, can you imagine putting up 3 points a game and guys are like, yeah, I mean, you didn't even get a vote for MVP.
Yeah, good year.
But anyways, yes, so we can talk about Lac La Biche. There were some rumblings. There was a random Instagram account that got opened that was just labeled Lac La Biche Junior A. I'm going to look up. So it looks like that Instagram account has been deleted. Or maybe not. I just can't find it.
Well, I wonder if they're getting involved with the AJ, like I had mentioned, if they'll just kind of cease operations on. Well, I wonder if it has anything to do with your email.
That's true. I guess so. To get back into it now, as I look for this, I did send an email because again, we mentioned that we have ties to. We have ties to Lac La Biche. You know, you went to college and played for the
for Ernie Kaplan
for the Portage College Voyageurs.
Yep.
And then obviously we have Jonah Smith, who's on our hockey team from Lac La Biche.
Yep.
And then we also have a friend of the show, Will Cox.
Yeah, friend of the show.
Assistant coach of the Thomas Aquinas Saints in Kenora, Ontario. Great guy. Great guy.
Quality ref.
He's really good friends with Carson Dubchuk.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Dubber.
So they have released the press release, and we can put this in the video version of the podcast here. So the NJHL put out a release that they want to expand into the community of Lac La Biche. Now, Lac La Biche has had a... the reason why I could not find it is because the name of the team on Instagram is Lac_Biche. Not Lac La Biche, it's Lac Biche. So, I mean, we're already off to a great start.
Yeah, you know. Semantics.
So they've had a junior B team in the past in the northwestern Alberta,
northeastern Alberta Junior League. Yeah.
So not a bad league, right? We actually have Dale Horseman, who is on our team from the sister league, the Northwestern Junior Leagues, but they're comparable, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know. To be fair, I don't know much about that Northeastern Alberta Junior Hockey League. We had a guy on our team, Darian Cardinal. He was a beauty, unreal at res tourneys, unreal. But good college player too. He came from that league, but I think he also might have played in OCN for a little bit.
Okay.
So it's not like he just was in that league. Like, you know what I mean? He just played there for a time.
Yeah, I mean, there is some talent there.
He was a quality player, so yeah.
I mean, and Dale Horseman. I mean, that guy's a solid player.
Love Dale.
So. And he's on our team this year. He came from the sister league of that NEA Junior Hockey League. Mm-hmm. So they've had an NEA JHL team before, the Northeastern Alberta Junior Hockey League. Didn't work. From what I can tell,
the Clippers. Yeah,
it didn't work just mainly due to the ownership not, I guess, having the most experience and not doing it the correct way.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
Yeah.
So to see this now, again with the NJHL logo slapped on it, is something that was a little bit concerning to me, just because again, like if I've spoken to parents that just have horror stories about their kids playing in any of these like GMHL or NJHL type leagues. Unfortunately, just for those players, they get sold a lot of snake oil a lot of the time because, hey, it's Junior A and we can just call ourselves Junior A and we can do these things and promise all this stuff, and it's really just, it kind of encapsulates everything that we don't want this to be, and it gives hockey, junior hockey, a bad name.
It's like the train wreck you can't look away from, right? Like that's why it's so interesting,
and that's why I like it. And I think a lot of it is to educate myself and try to give people the best information that I can give. Whenever I do hear about it, or whenever I do hear a story from a parent, it really honestly breaks my heart. Like there was a mom who messaged me last year just to give me her story about how her son, who from what I can tell is not a bad player, but he was 16, living in a remote community in BC, didn't have anywhere else to play, 3 hours to the closest AA team, 5 hours to the closest AAA team. And it's like, what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to play house league in his little town? Like, that's not good for anybody, realistically. Oh, but this team in the GMHL now has a spot, and we can play 50 games a year, they told him, and you get shells, and you get your jersey, and you get billeted, and it's all this stuff, and it sounds great. And then 6 guys show up to practice, and the coach is not committed, and the coach is boozing, and it's,
whatever.
It's just not good. Or you're on an overnight trip, and game on Friday, game on Saturday. Well, Friday night you're just sleeping in the bus, right? Like that's terrible, and that's something that shouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? And it's very unfortunate. So I did send an email to the rec manager, because I couldn't really find anybody else. The rec manager at Lac La Biche, and just told him, like, hey, just make sure not to say they're not going to do a good job, because we joked about Edson and we joked about High Prairie, but like everything that I can see, and the Edson Eagles have a pretty good program.
For sure. It's just funny. They're clearly like, it's like give an inch, take a mile. Like 14 overagers is insane. That's not what the league's for.
Exactly.
But it appears that's what it's for.
Yeah. Or like High Prairie, from all accounts, you can tell that's a pretty well-run league organization. The kids seem to be having a good time, and it's just like every game you're beating these teams with 9 players, 23-0, which is kind of...
It can't be fun either.
I don't necessarily... that's why we got to get Carson Baptiste on here, because I got to ask him what it's like. Realistically. Just as, like, if you look at this, there's the good teams, there's the 2 good teams, Edson and High Prairie, and then there's the teams that just are fielding 9 players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, it's important to see what that's going to look like and where it goes from here. But, like, realistically, I sent them an email just to say, hey, do your research on this situation before you join it, and say what you want about Hockey Canada, or say what you want about Junior B or whatever. I think it probably just makes sense to maybe just join that NEAJHL again, realistically.
Well, who knows? I mean, if it worked here's the thing, maybe they're not invited if it didn't work before. Yeah. So it's like, if this is their only option, maybe that's what they want to provide for kids in that community. Who knows? Maybe they have people trying to do a good thing. You never know, man. Like, and people's intentions too, they might not have as much experience and think they're doing good things, right? And it's like, it's all a learning process. But like we talked about it being such a fickle business earlier, like you don't really get 5 and 6 chances. You get like 1 or 2 maybe, like, and then what? So if you have someone that's inexperienced and can't get the job done like pretty quickly, you're behind the 8 ball immediately. And then it's like, you got to pick up the pieces faster than it fell apart, which is nearly impossible.
Well, yeah, even like it's the reputation thing, right? And we talked about it earlier. Like, unfortunately, like Fort Francis was dealt a bad hand. Like, if you want to compare situations, like the situation that we had, you have the Flyers, but realistically, we were starting at level. Like, if you had a graph, right? We were starting at 0. Nothing behind us. Nothing was bad. We didn't really have anything to go off of, but we were at straight up 0. Team like Fort Francis, right? Like, they were already, when they took that team over, when Tyler Miller, Luke Judson, and Cody Mosbach took that team over, like, they were starting from 6 feet down. Realistically, like, that's tough.
Yeah, they were behind the 8 ball for sure.
And that's exactly, and like you said, 1 chance. Like Lac La Biche, now they're not going to get another chance with this Junior B program because of what happened.
But they still have the opportunity to give a quality program. Like,
Yep.
let's talk about my buddy coaches in the GMHL. If we're talking about the G,
Yep.
Vito Scaringi. I mean, that's the NJ. It's not really the same. They were the GMHL West, and then they separated specifically because even the GMHL West was tremendously worse than the GMHL, which is around the Toronto area, which is not renowned as a particularly competitive league, but there's still good players that go as overagers and have success there. And Vito is trying to run a good program, and Dunner plays for him, right? Our former player. So, you know, there's guys out there that are trying to do the right things in that league. It's just any league, you can't go in with a lackadaisical, unserious attitude, because these kids now, and the information and access and how they can share everything, like, that's how quickly it gets out. So it's like, if you're not entering your first inaugural season with that seriousness in mind and understanding those things, then you are fucked.
And there's no bones about that.
Yeah.
And like, we haven't, and I mean, just the elephant in the room, whether it was the AJ and the BC's the situation, the other elephant maybe is Kenora a little bit. And unfortunately, that's one of those things where it just wasn't off to the greatest start. And again, now they're going to find themselves a little bit behind the eight ball. But they're in the right, I think.
Not to accuse them, but I think what happened was they just kind of, it all happened very, very quickly, right? So it just like, not that they put themselves behind the eight ball. It's just like they had to, you know, argue with the town about getting ice, and I don't even know if they have a room yet. So like, if there's one saving grace, it's like, okay, this is our first year, guys. Look at how fucked up it was. Now we have our room. Now we have our ice confirmed. Now. When it was like, they were recruiting while figuring all that out. How the fuck can you recruit without that shit figured out? So like, I felt bad for Jack in a way, like talking to him this summer and stuff. So I feel like, dude, they've won a couple games. They've played some teams tight. They beat Thunder Bay. You know,
they beat Thunder Bay in Thunder Bay. We could not.
We couldn't do that this year. So I mean, like, let's. Hey, they've competed, man, and they've done a job with what they've had, and I think it's salvageable. Like we said, maybe one or two chances, but next year's it.
And they've gotten to a spot where those guys play for Nathan. Like, Nathan has been, I think, the best thing to happen to that team, realistically.
No disrespect to Cody, I liked him as a guy, but yeah, since then it just seems like it's been a little bit more just organized, I guess. Like, just the experiences that we've had with them. Not to disrespect any of those guys. Everyone's working hard and doing their best, but I know that's just our perspective.
It's one, and you say rushed it. I think maybe the last thing we talk about is just that was kind of the polar opposite of how we did it, and from what I could see, the polar opposite of how Cam River did it.
Yeah, it took their time.
Cam River was a junior B program for, I think, 5 years, something like that, and they kind of built up to a spot where they could then be comfortable joining junior A. And from us, we basically were working at it for 2 years straight, you know, and then me and you just directly trying to build the hockey team for a whole year,
8 months probably.
Like a long time, right? Like, it was still very difficult.
Yeah, me 8 months, you longer than me, because you were in on it, like going to camps and scouting and all that stuff, and then I joined, and you know, we really got into signing, because that was closer to the signing period, right?
Yeah.
I forget the months of work ahead of the signing period, right?
Well, we announced you and Riffle on the same day, right? That's
right.
We announced, because we were working on Riffle for Owen Riffle. So the very first Super Cup bomber, Owen Riffle.
Yeah, tremendous player.
Yeah, but I mean, anything you want to add in terms of or anything else you want to talk about before we?
No, I think I think that's pretty much all I want to say. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah. Being back doing this again, I really enjoy it, and just being able to talk freely about these things that we experience every day, you know, and hopefully other people find this stuff as interesting as we do. I think there's some value in the stuff we're talking about too, even for people to learn, and we talk about that experience, right? Like, for myself, I listen to a lot of podcasts, like the Coach's Site as a Glass and Out podcast. It's very good. Yep. And I listen to that to learn. So I hope to kind of, you know, maybe be one of those outlets as well that people might look to, just to gain some insight and experience and learn about this world of junior hockey that is so darn confusing. And you look at some Facebook posts from parents at junior hockey discussion and all these things, and like, there's a lot of people that have no idea. So if we can shed some light on some of the things in the junior hockey world, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, 100%. I hope that it's been fun, or hope that you enjoyed listening to it. Next week we have
Kevin Rawlick.
Kevin Rawlick, who's been in the hockey world for a long time. We're excited to talk to him.
Yeah, so I met Kevin because he actually took over my job at FIA, the academy that I started back in Southern Ontario. I shouldn't say I started it because the school was there. I started the hockey program there,
Yeah, right.
but Kevin took over my job and, just started contacting him there. It's always awkward, right? When guys take it in your job and you don't know, you like kind of go, "Is this guy an asshole?" Like, you know what I mean? It's just funny. But once we learned each other, like he's a great guy. I've really learned to like him, and he's got a couple buddies like Preston Totter.
Yeah.
He's playing in Red Lake
player,
this year.
Unfortunately.
So,
nice player, unfortunately.
Yeah. But either way, I'm excited to talk to him. He played at Mercyhurst. He coaches now. He's coached for a long time, but he knows tons of people. He's coached NHLers. He's got a lot to offer. So I'm excited just to hear his perspective on the whole thing, because he's seen players go through it. And he's watched junior hockey develop too, because it's an animal in itself that's developing. So it'll be good to get his perspective on some stuff.
Right on. And if you have any questions for us, please leave them in the comment section of this video. We'll try to get to them if we have time next week. And other than that, I was Austin Hoey for Carson Johnstone. Thanks for listening or watching Pursuit Hockey Discussion.
Thanks.